Things that you should never say to women if you want to build genuine attraction and keep her interest sky high. And as someone who's coached hundreds of guys, I've seen these common mistakes pop up again and again, and it can be tricky because you might be saying some of these things without even realizing it. And that can lead to scenarios where one minute things are going well with a girl, and then the next, the vibe just falls flat and you're left wondering what went wrong. And if you're the kind of guy who gets caught in that nice guy behavior trap, you're really going to want to stick around for every point in this video so you can turn things around in your favor and build that attraction that you're aiming for. Now, this first one is a form of humor that you may have used at some point, and I actually find it funny in some cases when it's used sparingly and it's coming from the right frame. The type of humor I'm talking about is self-deprecating humor, and it can be used in different ways depending on the person. And just so we're clear, because there's a lot of people that watch these videos from a variety of backgrounds, when I say self-deprecating humor, I'm talking about the type of humor that basically makes yourself the butt of the joke. And some people use self-deprecating humor as a coping mechanism to try and cover up certain insecurities, but when it's done from a place of genuine confidence, it can actually be a display of strength. It can lighten the mood or show that you're confident enough to laugh at yourself if it's coming from an obviously confident and secure source. However, unless you really radiate that aura of confidence and sureness about yourself, or you have a certain status that boosts someone's opinion of you, you do run the risk of lowering your value in that person's eye by drawing their attention to certain details or thoughts about you in a negative way. And this can get magnified even more when you're with a girl because of that dynamic where she wants to be able to look up to you. And it's difficult to be able to maintain a position of being a respectable leader when you're bringing yourself down with self-deprecating humor and self-deprecating comments in general. This can get magnified even more if the woman doesn't know your personality, because typically as someone gets to know you more, they'll gain a better understanding of how confident or unconfident you actually are, and what is clearly a joke versus something that is not. So especially early in interactions, avoid giving her reasons to doubt you in any way. There's a difference between being transparent and down to earth versus giving a woman reasons to doubt you or find fault in you. Transparency and being relatable can be really powerful at building connection, but taking shots at yourself, even in a joking way, is more likely to end badly, especially if you're a guy that struggled with confidence or you have more of those typical nice guy behaviors. We are all humans, so we all have faults, myself included. But as a rule of thumb, it's better to let the woman discover those faults on her own rather than potentially serving them to her on a silver platter and saying, hey, look at this negative thing about me, even if it's in a joking way. It takes some finesse to use self-deprecating humor in a way that actually boosts your value, because it also depends on your other attributes and the person who is saying it. So Brad Pitt could use self-deprecating humor and have it be endearing because of who he is and his extreme status, but the average Joe who struggles with consistently attracting and holding the attraction of a woman is more likely to not have it help him in any way. So let her discover your flaws on her own rather than pointing them out, even in a joking way. There's rarely any upside, and most guys who think that they're being a comedian will tear into themselves too much when using self-deprecating humor. So with that in mind, let's talk about another common mistake when it comes to leading the interaction with a woman in an attractive way. So recently someone asked for feedback on a first date that started well, but then suddenly took a turn for the worst and the vibe died out, which led to the girl eventually ghosting him. The guy described a situation that some of you will be able to relate to either currently or in the past. And it was a situation where he met up with this girl. He said the conversation was flowing well and they were getting along, so he was feeling good about escalating things as the date went on. So at one point he decided to go on a walk with her, and they had this moment where they got close to each other, and he said, "Would you let me hold your hand?" And she hesitated and kind of recoiled instinctually, and then she ended up declining it. And from there, things stayed platonic and fizzled out, and he was wondering what he could have done better. The mistake he made is one that a lot of guys make, and that is the mistake of seeking permission to lead in a situation where it's already expected of you. And you might wonder, well, how do you know when to be assertive without crossing the line? And the key to understand is that being assertive doesn't mean being pushy or forcing a girl to do something that she doesn't want to do. It's about being confident and taking the lead while still paying attention to her comfort level. You want to make sure that the mood is relaxed and natural and gradually escalate from there, while also showing that you aren't afraid to do so. And I've seen discussions in the past where guys will wonder how to handle a situation where they're escalating with a girl, clothes are coming off, and then the girl suddenly says that she doesn't want to sleep with the guy. And then someone gives advice along the lines of, well, just keep trying to make sure that she's not playing any games and wait until you get like 4 or 5 no's in a row. And advice like that is just weird and bordering on assault at a certain point. So I don't endorse anything like that. And someone giving advice like that doesn't understand why last minute resistance happens in the first place. But when it comes to something like holding a girl's hand or going for a kiss and you feel like the vibe is right, go for it. The last thing you want to do is ask for her permission to take the lead. Women like to feel like things are just flowing naturally and organically. And if she's attracted to you enough to be out on a date with you and things are going well, then saying something like, "Would you let me hold your hand?" just sounds like you're someone in a lower value position asking for permission, and it signals hesitation and a lack of sureness in yourself. But if you're in that same situation and you just insist on drawing attention to it, then just hold out your hand calmly and say, "Give me your hand." But another way this can manifest is saying something like, "Would it be okay if I called you sometime?" It's a weak, childlike frame. And it's like, are you a man or are you a student in her kindergarten class asking for permission? A better way would just be saying, "I'll give you a call on Friday," or "We should catch up later this week." If the girl doesn't want to talk, she won't talk to you. She will make herself unavailable. It's better for her just to make herself unavailable than to be asking for her permission to communicate with her. And overall, it's just about having the balls to be assertive in a way that is cool, calm, and collected without being pushy or weird and trying to force someone to do something that they don't genuinely want to do. It's better to make a casual, calibrated attempt verbally or physically and get denied than to ride this weird, lukewarm position of walking on eggshells. Now, building on the last point about keeping things casual, you also want to avoid creating a vibe where the girl feels like the next step is a large commitment or a big leap to take with you. And this usually means avoid using language that sounds more binding or makes things sound bigger than what they are. So for example, instead of saying something like, "Would you be down to go on a date with me?" you'd be better off saying something like, "We should grab a drink sometime." The latter sounds more casual and laid back without expectations versus the first phrase, which brings attention to the idea that this is a date, which sounds like there's significant romantic expectations behind it. That can be binding because if this girl gets to the date and she doesn't vibe with you, she doesn't want to be trapped in a scenario that may drag on and on. It's a similar concept with business. Commitment often makes people hesitate more than price does. So if I said the only way to get this product is to sign up for a year in advance, you're more likely to hesitate and think about things rather than me saying you can pay for this on a week-by-week basis and cancel at any time. With the week-to-week option, you'll likely be down right away because there's no risk in you getting trapped in something that you don't want. So bringing this back to dating, it's a similar concept to where you're better off making things sound like it's no big deal and it'll be a good time without any pressure. One of the absolute best communication tips I can give you with women is that what is understood doesn't need to be said. Everybody on earth knows what it means when you say, "Let's grab a drink sometime." The woman already knows that this is a date, but there's nuance to the statement that makes it more approachable psychologically. And before I move into the next point, I just want to say really quickly that if you want to work with me directly, click the link in the description below and check out my brand new program and mentorship. I'm offering a unique coaching experience that will help you master your communication, boost your confidence, refine your image, and develop a real strategic approach to getting more dates consistently, and all while keeping you accountable for real tangible results. So if you want to check it out, click the link below, check out the testimonials, and I'd love to have you in the new program with the other guys that are already getting great results. Now, branching off that last point into another one that you should absolutely do less of, and by that I mean literally never do this, is apologizing for things that have to do with your existence rather than your actions. This is crucial for the guys trying to shed that nice guy image that lowers their value. And it's a big one for a couple of reasons. The first is that it's very common and an extremely easy mistake to make if you've always been more of a nice guy type. And the second reason is that it crushes attraction because of how submissive and weak it makes you sound. Sometimes you'll hear these hardcore alpha male type content creators say to never apologize under any circumstance or else it makes you look weak, but that's too extreme. The idea is more so understanding what to not apologize for. And this point revolves around the idea of avoiding apologizing for anything that has to do with you merely existing in the world. So for example, don't approach a girl and say something like, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I just wanted to say," or even texting a girl, don't say something like, "Hey, I don't mean to be annoying you, but are you still free on Friday?" These types of phrases are apologies for things that do not need an apology in the first place. You are framing yourself as a lower value burden rather than a positive addition to her life. You know the advice that gets given about viewing yourself as the prize? Well, this would be the absolute opposite of that and viewing yourself as a burden. It only makes sense to apologize for actions that were genuinely wrongdoing on your part rather than apologizing for just being alive. So for example, if you overreact in a situation and you get pissed and say some things that you shouldn't have, that would warrant saying something like, hey, I apologize for that. I said some things that I shouldn't have. But there's nothing wrong with approaching a girl to try to talk to her, or trying to kiss a girl if things were going well on a date, or sending a text to see if she still wants to go out this weekend or whatever else. So stop giving her the idea that you're bothering her or that you're walking on eggshells to try and not offend anyone, and instead embrace the idea of walking like you're a giant and moving how you want to move. Because girls tend to mirror the vibe that you put out, and if you come across as if you're apologetic just for existing, they'll pick up on that and start seeing you in the same low value way. At some point, you've probably wondered how to create more positive emotion in an interaction, because you hear guys say things like, be less logical and spike her emotions. And I've even said it as well because it is important. But what I've seen is that guys try to take this too far and do a bunch of special tricks or overshoot things and try to be a comedian or Casanova, or they'll be too much of a dick and it just comes off try hard and weird. So a mental reframe I want you to think about is that when it comes to creating positive emotion, it's not always about doing more of something. Many times it's about doing less of the wrong thing. So a lot of guys will tend to get hung up and stuck when a girl throws a test or a tease their way, and this can lead to logically explaining yourself in a negative way. So for example, if a girl says something like, wow, you wore those shoes? The wrong thing would be to say something like, oh, yeah, I wasn't going to wear them because I wasn't sure what else to wear, so I ended up picking these. It's those defensive, logical explanations like that are attraction killers, because it signals that you just don't get it and you're more reactive than you are proactive. And even worse is seeking validation or showing uncertainty in your decisions and saying something like, what's wrong with these shoes? Do you really not like them? You really want to avoid stuff like this at all costs. And I see guys getting caught up in explaining themselves all the time. It happens left and right, and many guys don't even realize that they're doing it. With the type of example I just gave, it would be better to either roll with the punches in a confident way or use the momentum against the girl, like how a judo player uses their opponent's momentum to take them down, which is a lot of fighting analogies, right? But as an example, I had a girl throw a tease at me like this not too long ago. I'd already met up with this girl before, and I was real casual in a hoodie and jeans, and she goes, "Oh, I see you put in a lot of effort for me." And I quickly replied back and said, "You should be more appreciative. I put on my nicest outfit for you." And she just cracked up and laughed because it's obviously not true, and I didn't show any genuine regard for her trolling type of comment. The result is a positive spike in emotion through laughter and not defending myself at all. The larger signal there is confidence and humor. I didn't need to defend myself because I don't care to impress her or win her over, and that lack of validation seeking is attractive. So it's not always about some super slick tactic or line to spike a girl's emotions. Sometimes it's just about not doing something else, like explaining yourself or getting defensive. And a ton of guys will take things too literally and get caught in a logical reactive mode, which is a big attraction killer. In a similar vein, this one is something I rarely see talked about, and I'm not sure if I've even really seen anyone dive into this, but it's important, and you'll notice this with your interactions with women if you pay attention. And that is the idea that women's perspectives in general are pretty pliable, and they tend to mold to the guy that they trust and follow when their investment is really high. But even before that, a woman will follow your lead wherever you choose to draw her focus. So sometimes what will happen is that you will mention something that draws the girl's focus to that thing that she wasn't even thinking about in the first place, and this can really work against you. This is a similar point to the one I made about letting her discover your flaws, but it applies across various topics and details that you may bring up. So a simple example to illustrate my point here would be if you're self-conscious about your teeth or something else about your appearance, and then you make a comment like, yeah, I hate how my teeth look. I'm hoping to get some work done later this year. Her focus is immediately going to go to your teeth and thinking about how you look, when that may have never been on her mind to start with. Another situation might be where you feel awkward and you think that you're being transparent and relatable by saying something like, well, this is awkward. And then it draws her attention to the situation and magnifies it when it may have not been bad at all to her, but now she's thinking about how awkward it is to you and how it's intensifying in your mind because you brought attention to it. And this can get more nuanced the deeper you get into relationships with women as well. You might bring up a topic that isn't a big deal, and now it's a big deal because you're yapping about it unnecessarily. Sometimes you just need to shut your mouth and realize that your parents were right all along when they said that loose lips sink ships. And so many guys talk themselves out of situations that were already going well because they wouldn't stop talking. More isn't always better, especially when it comes to talking. And some things are just better left unsaid, or let her bring them up if they're going to come up at all. So learn to be disciplined with your speech and learn to pick and choose your spots, and you'll be better for it. Now, there's still a lot more to learning to communicate in an attractive, confident way with women. So if you want to work with me to level up your communication skills, your confidence, your mindset, your image, your presentation, your overall dating strategy, and just boost your dating life across the board, then be sure to check the first link in the description and we can get started working today. And with that said, I will see you in the next one.